Hello, welcome back to Emerge, the health podcast for busy, high-performing women. I'm really excited to be joined by my guest today. Her name is Lynn Bowman. She's the author of Brownies for Breakfast, which we're definitely going to talk about. It's a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them. The book is a bestseller on Amazon with a 5-star rating and rave reviews, and it's a cookbook you'll actually enjoy reading and using. Lynn has been featured at women's expos throughout the country, teaming up with actress Deirdre Hall to write and publish Deirdre Hall's Kitchen Close-Up in 2010 and Deirdre Hall's How Does She Do It in 2012. In previous lives, she's won national awards as a creative director for Silicon Valley companies, as a creative director for E&J Gallo Winery, advertising manager at Redken Laboratories, and freelanced for agencies in San Jose, Los Angeles, and New York. She's also worked as an actress, makeup artist, screenwriter, illustrator, legal journalist, and television weather person. She has 3 grown children, 2 absolutely perfect grandchildren, maybe 3 now, and is the president of the, I can't say that word, Pescadero Foundation.
Pescadero, right.
Pescadero, and she lives on a farm in Northern California. So Lynn, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be with you, Dr. Alex. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. I'm excited to have you. And, we were talking quite a bit before we started recording, and I was like, we just need to record some of this. But I love to start. And I think our listeners will really find a lot of value in just hearing some of your journey and your story, because you've obviously lived a lot of life. And
well, like many of us, I've kind of lived a lot of lives. I mean, when we were starting out, my generation in the 60s, there was no plan. We were just scrabbling to do whatever we could do and get whatever jobs we could get. And the idea of getting an education that had an end to it and a degree, and then we would do this, and then there would be a plan, and then we would climb the ladder. No. I like to remind people that in 1964, when I graduated from high school, Harvard was not co-ed. There were so many places that we were not welcome, and we were legally not allowed as women to go there. So, and talking to you today takes me from the beginning of the story to the sort of recent, not end, I hope, of the story, but my youngest is 43 years old. She just had a baby, and she's a cancer survivor, and the baby is spectacular, and she's doing great. And her whole team was women. And I hope you gals appreciate, first of all, the brilliance that you bring to your practice that just wasn't there in the 60s, in the 70s. When I had my kids, these guys would literally hand you the baby and go, okay, there you go, bye-bye. And now, there are lactation consultants and these women have had babies. They understand what babies are and what they do, and they've been up all night taking care of them and so on. So it's thrilling to go on this arc now with you, but starting I had my first full-time job in an advertising agency in 1966. So if you've seen any of those episodes of Mad Men, most of us have seen, okay, that was me. 19 in the pantyhose and the high heels, and 1966, and now here we are, and so much has changed. But one of the things that has not changed is crappy food.
No, it's even crappier.
It's even crappier. And so I'm here with you, not as a medical expert and not as a chef. I'm here with someone who spent my professional life communicating, and sometimes communicating about really challenging things. In the Silicon Valley, we were doing these things that nobody understood what the heck they were, let alone what they did. And my job was to explain in consumer language what a modem did and why you would want it, or these other technologies. So now the challenge is, we've got the research, we've got all you brilliant physicians out there and dietitians and all this stuff, and y'all have not made any inroads. This is not personal, but you are getting nowhere explaining to people that they're killing themselves with what they eat every day, and they are damaging their children. Granny buzzkill here, but we really need to turn this around. We have a sick nation something like, and you probably have a better grip on the statistics than I do, but it's 85% of Americans have some form of a chronic disease.
Yeah.
They are, obesity being shared among a lot of them, but not entirely. It's heart disease and diabetes and kidney disease and a whole long list, things, colon disease. And these are almost entirely preventable, and they are reversible, and they are manageable just by stop eating crap. And I make it sound really simple, but my message is, it's not complicated. It starts with a decision that people make, hopefully, and they decide that they are going to be healthy, and they decide that their kids are going to be healthy. And how to do that is not hard. It's not a mystery. We know how to do that, but nobody's doing it.
Yeah. And I have some thoughts and theories on, why that is. One is, and we talked a little bit about this, there's so many levels. There's so many places we could go with this.
Oh my
One
goodness.
is the food's addictive. Another is we're up against this huge marketing giant of the food industry who markets to our kids and markets.
People are making a ton of money keeping you sick.
Yeah. No, seriously, don't even get me started on cancer research, but we'll table that for another time. And then we've also got this dynamic of like our emotional ties and connections to food. And I think a lot of it goes back deep. Like generationally, I think you're in the same age bracket as my parents, actually, because I have parents who were older in life when they had kids. But, there's stuff that like a lot has changed and shifted, I think, in terms of, we don't really sit at the table anymore. And there's stuff that's missing. But also like we have these things that connect us to the past. So that's like a bunch of lard and, like whatever junk we were cooking with, which now it's even worse than, back in the day when we just used plain old lard.
Well, I talk a lot about that in this book because I think it's important to help you make this decision, to understand how you got where you are. Mm-hmm. And all of this, billions of dollars have been made playing on your emotions. And first of all, I want people to understand, and you're a doc, you know this, that when I use the word addiction, I don't mean that this is not a metaphor. This is absolutely an addiction. Sugar is highly addictive. It's more addictive than heroin. And there are other forms of sugar. There are lots of forms of sugar. For example, if you're eating highly processed flour, wheat flour, it reacts in your body basically like sugar.
Yep.
And most folks today, moms, dad, people, we're driving through, people are not sitting down. And what do you get when you drive through? You get white bread or wheat bread that's basically white bread, but somebody said, oh, it's healthier if it's wheat. No. It's over-processed bread, some kind of toxic meat product. And that's a whole separate thing. Where did that meat come from? What's in it and why? Okay, yeah. But whether it's a chicken patty or a yucky fish fried thing or a beef patty, if you're driving through and getting it, it's toxic. Mm-hmm. And so you're eating that 3 times, 4 times a day now, or pizza.
Yeah.
And what is pizza? It's bad meat and bad bread and dairy. Guess what the other one is? Dairy, which when people ask me, well, what's the first thing that I need to do? What's the number one thing that I should do to change my diet to make a big change? Well, number one, we've already talked about it, sugar. Mm-hmm. Like a hot rock. Now people say, well, how do you quit sugar? I'll tell you in the book. It's easy. It's wonderful. But number one, I want you the same way I would want you, if you were a heroin addict, I would have something to substitute for the heroin. And you know what those things are. I would get you into rehab and no more heroin. How hard is that? No, just no. So sugar, that's how I would treat that. Just gone. And then the second one is dairy. Because unless you live in a place where you have a cow outside whose name you know, who you know what that cow has eaten, and where that cow has been, and she is giving you some milk and you are drinking it. If that's the case, go ahead, eat some dairy. If you don't know the cow, where that dairy came from, then I'm sorry, no, just no. Because if you knew first how the cow felt, how the cow was treated, what is in that cow, the antibiotics, the toxic crap that they give the animals to keep them on their feet, and then what they do between the cow and the store and all that comes with it, if you really thought deeply about it and you consider yourself sentient in some way, you'd quit. And you also would know what that substance is doing. Now, this is, I know all your life you've been hearing milk makes a body strong, and milk and got milk. It's okay. If I had the money, maybe I'd do an advertising campaign that would go out and say, got poison. I mean, that doesn't make it okay.
No,
that does not. And I was in the business, right? I sold bad wine as part of my career. I won't mention any more names, but that's what the advertising business is all about, is selling you something without regard, absolutely, to whether that's a thing that you should have. You know, that big new Buick, here. It's crazy when we think about it, but that's where our food beliefs and habits have come from since the 50s, since TV.
Well, and people don't, like, speaking of dairy and milk, people don't realize, like, the whole milk has calcium thing came from, it was a marketing ploy because it wasn't selling well. Right. And you actually get far more calcium from eating leafy green vegetables and things like.
Yeah. And in fact, milk can be destructive to your calcium. Yeah. So it's Michael Pollan said it, eat food, which most of y'all are not doing. Eat food, mostly plants. And then he says, not too much. And I argue that if you eat a whole food, plant-based diet, you can't eat too much. It's literally impossible to overeat. If you remove the meat, if you remove the sugar, if you remove the overprocessed toxic flour and crap. And of course, people listening are going, well, so what does that leave? What does that leave? Yeah. And we'll talk about that. But that just gives you a sense of, right, okay, you're going to take all that out of your diet. But what you're replacing it with is nutrient-dense food. So when you eat my donut from the book, yes, there are donuts, brownies, cakes, pies. My pumpkin pie is killer, by the way. It's just, in a good way. Unlike your pumpkin pie folks, the advertisers. So if you are eating my donut, it's made of pumpkin and nut butter, and there's a chocolate one that's got cocoa in it, but there's a pumpkin spice that has spices in it. It's nutrient dense. Everything about that donut nourishes you, actually feeds you or your kid, including there's frosting that is a pink frosting with little sugar-free sprinkles if you want. You can have all that. But it's nutrient dense. So when you eat 2 of those donuts, you go, okay, thanks, that was great. That's all you need. And it's important that we understand that the food that you're eating now at 11 o'clock in front of the tube, you're watching Bridgerton or whatever, and you've got your bag of Doritos, or that food was engineered to addict you. It was engineered so that you literally can't eat just one.
Yeah.
It's addictive, that word again. It is. But also there's a response in your body that is not a healthy food response. It's a response to something, and with the little mice, and it's all been proven, that science is all out there, that just makes you want more. It's not feeding you. It's not feeding you. So what's going to happen when you change the way you eat is your body will adjust very happily to being fed. It will like being fed. People always ask me, well, what about your cravings? Don't you crave sugar or pork chops? And I mean, in my life, I've eaten a lot of pork chops. Over, when you add up all those years, I loved pork chops, but I can't eat them anymore. Because what happens, and we can argue this if you like from a medical standpoint, but in my reading, it's my understanding that the chemical composition of your saliva actually changes.
Mm-hmm.
Your hormones change.
Yep.
So your cravings change. You actually want different foods than you used to want. So it's just like that heroin addict. You have to go through a withdrawal. You go through a couple of weeks of, wow, this is crazy, but your body wants to be healthy and it will work with you. And sure enough, pretty soon you're craving arugula.
Arugula is so good.
Not a joke.
I have been there. I have craved arugula. Like, that is my favorite thing to have for breakfast, actually.
Me too. I love it. It's delicious. Yeah. And we have a yard full of it. It's cheap or free because it just reseeds itself. And you can go out and get a handful fresh and there you go. And we have to talk about how much food costs now. And I want people to understand that when they're driving through, it seems cheap in some ways, but it's costing you a fortune in many ways.
Yeah. So you end up with health issues. One of the statistics is 90% of the things that take people to the doctors these days is treatable by lifestyle, but instead we're ending up on drugs or having surgery or
more and more and more.
If we were just willing to make some dietary changes. And I live in and I don't know, how old were you when you started your journey with food? Like, has it been in the later part of life, or did you come to your realizations early?
I always loved to eat, Dr. Alex. I was that kid at the table saying, give me that.
Yeah.
I want more. I love to eat. And I learned to cook as a child, which people my age typically did. We were part of the kitchen crew.
Right.
But a life-changing event in my life was that my mother died when I was 18 of a chronic disease.
Yeah.
So as happens, that's a life forming thing that some of us go through later in life and some of us go through early in life. In my case, I saw up close and personal what losing someone to a chronic disease looks like, the deterioration over years and the cost to a family of losing a family member young. She was 46 and beautiful and brilliant and, shouldn't have died, but she had kidney disease. And in that time, dialysis was very experimental. There was nothing that could save her. So I also saw that meant that the family was bankrupt. That's another thing that happens to us that we don't think about with chronic disease, especially in the United States.
Yeah.
We have to pay for it out of our pocket. And none of us can afford that. And we don't want to be paying that as a community, as a society for our friends and neighbors. We shouldn't have to bear that cost. All of us. It's too much. It's I don't know what's the word for it. It's epidemic is the word. Because it is epidemic. But so I understood that very young. And then I went out into the world, and it was the 60s, and I was a hipster, and we all were wearing calico and feathers and have little gardens and things, and we were going to have our babies out in the field and then tuck them under our arm and go back to work and so on. Well, that's BS, right? That happens like never. But I was so idealistic. We were going to stop the war and peace and love and change the world. And so I started having children in 1975. My son was born. And I was told that I had in my pregnancy, I gained 60 pounds and he was 10 pounds when he was born. So the male doctors said to me, oh, you probably had gestational diabetes. And so you need to look out for that when you're in your 40s, which seemed an eternity away at the time. But a decade later or so, I started asking, should I be tested? And no, you're young and you're not overweight particularly, and you're fine, don't worry about it. Because diabetes is asymptomatic. Until you're really severely ill, you don't have symptoms. It's a sneaky, silent, internal thing that's happening to you. So I finally got someone to give me a test in my 40s. And sure enough, I was like creeping over into what at the time was understood to be numbers that weren't good. And so going back to the issue with my mother, I deep in my soul was determined to stay not only alive, but strong and well. I had 3 little ones and I was going to be there for them. So that meant I had to do what I had to do. And I went out looking for information about what to do. What do I eat? What don't I eat? And the American Diabetic Association information, and again, I'm a professional communicator. That was what I did for my living. I'm reading this stuff going, the hell, this is such crap.
Oh, crap.
What is this? And of course, now we understand that was drug companies talking, and docs who were trained in a lot of things, but not food, not table culture, and not communication either.
No.
No, in fact, I think I might mention this in the book. I don't know. I've talked about it, but one of the statistics I found that was interesting was that something like 15% of the people who walk out of a doctor's office have any memory or understanding of what was just said. Okay, so do the math. That's a lot of people who go, what was that? What am I going to do? Because when you're stressed, particularly, and that's why you should always have someone with you when there's anything serious, particularly going on, or your elders need to have someone with them at the doctor's office, because you walk out and you don't know what they said. And even if they said it beautifully and clearly, which, excuse me, Dr. Alex, but
I pride myself on not being like other doctors.
Okay, I love that. Good. And I'm sexist about. I think women are a little better than men about it, because men are culturally kind of not great at communicating feelings.
Yeah.
Are they?
Not at all.
Not at all. And if you're seeing a physician, a healer, you got some feelings. There's some feelings that are going to be involved. So you're asking about my story, and the feeling thing makes me think of one more about why I finished the book, because it took me about 3 years to do. And it was a journey in a number of ways. But my youngest daughter, who just had the baby, who's a cancer survivor, age 43, she is a nurse practitioner, a hospitalist. And she called me one afternoon and said, "Ma," we do this a lot. She's in her car or whatever. She said, "I just checked a guy in today, and he's about your age, and he's a vet, and he's here losing his legs because he's diabetic." And she said, "So I've got you on my mind. So I'm just going to tell you this. I told him that you were writing this book." I sat down with him and I said, "Yeah, my mom is writing a book about diabetes and how to beat it and how to live well with it. And she's writing it because she says it's the book that she didn't have, that she wishes someone had handed to her."
Yeah.
And she said, this guy got tears in his eyes and took hold of my hands and said, "Please ask her for me to finish the book. Please finish the book." So how could I say no?
Yeah.
How could I not finish the book? I did. And it's not a money-making proposition, believe me, but it's, if it does save 1 or 2 people, the anguish of the deterioration that takes place in your life when you don't deal with this disease or heart disease, but particularly diabetes is just cruel.
Yeah.
It's ugly in its more serious stages. It gets real ugly. So yeah, and it's just about moving your buns a little bit and eating smart, eating thoughtfully.
Absolutely. And I was going to share, it's somewhat, I think it's increasing, like 60% of the population is what's called insulin resistant. And
That's
so
it.
for those that are, listening, that are like, well, I don't know if diabetes really applies to me. Like most of us are moving in that direction. And it's
Yes.
because of our food quality. There's sugar in absolutely everything. It's hidden in all the stuff.
Everything.
One of the things I have my clients come off of sugar, and a lot of them, I think because I started my journey so young, I was 20 when I changed my diet radically and, healed a lot, like overcame asthma and a bunch of, my own health issues through that. Yeah. But I think I get stuck in like, a lot of people don't know what I've learned because I'm like, oh, I've known this for so long. Like everyone has to know it by now, don't they? And they don't. And so, people are surprised, like, oh, there's sugar in my spaghetti sauce or my, my salsa, or this thing that says that. And then all the stuff that's labeled as sugar-free has got Splenda and, a bunch of other sucralose and just all these hidden things that are even sweeter and spike your insulin even worse, and still lead you in that direction. So
in the book, I have 2 or 3 pages about how to read a label and what it means. And one of the things that I discovered that was a surprise to me, I just had never thought about it, is that those nutritional profiles that you see on a label that says this much protein and this much salt, and so they're all wrong. They
don't mean anything.
They don't really mean anything. It's the food industry's way of saying, okay, here you go, honey. Yeah. You're fine. It can be something of a guide if you are looking, for example, is there some protein in this? Yeah, that will help you know that. Yeah. Is there a lot of salt in this? Yes, you have to put the salt on the label and it is added. And that's why they're going to have an actual number. But there is no accuracy to those numbers. And the illustration would be, I've got 2 carrots. These 2 carrots were 2 different seeds, 2 different kinds of plants, raised in 2 different kinds of soil for different lengths of time. Are they going to have the same nutritional profile? No, it can be 8 to 10 times different, even for a carrot. But guess what? It's a freaking carrot. Eat it. It's okay. It's fine. As long as it is actual real food, whole food, you don't have to worry. And people ask me, and probably you too, I don't measure what I eat. Mm-mm. I don't count calories. I don't journal about what I eat. I just make sure I eat good, actual food all the time. That's what I eat. Yeah. And what do I cheat on? Well, I have been known to eat a Trader Joe whole grain corn chip more than once. But it's only got like 3 ingredients. It's corn and salt and oil, and that's all that's in it. Yeah. It's not the best food in the world, but I'm not asking you to be a Benedictine monk about this. I'm just asking you not to be stupid. Yeah. Not to be a victim of advertising or of the food company's agenda. Have your own agenda about food, which is being healthier and happier and spending less money. And I also talk a lot in the book, because I just couldn't help myself, about the fact that food isn't just food. Food is connection. Food is ritual. Food is family and love and friends and tradition and all these other emotional things wrapped up in one. And so it's no wonder we've got this kind of disjointed, crazy relationship going on now with food. We've disrupted our food ways in a serious, serious disruption. And so I'm very interested in having us look at that and think about that. And when you bring back the quality of your food, I'm hoping you'll think about the quality of your relationships around food, your family. Yes, I was brought up sitting around a table using utensils and a napkin. And a big part of whatever I absorbed in mine. Yes, I actually grew up in Pasadena, California. I'm that lady, the little lady from Pasadena. But we grew up understanding, and our parents understood that what we were learning at the table was maybe the most important thing we would ever know. It was how to make a case for ourselves, how to share, I mean, it's this long list of things that you only learn. It's your cultural incubation. It's how to be part of a group, how to be part of a family, a tribe, a clan, friends. And how do your children, the age that yours are, Dr. Alex, how do they go out into the world to work, to go for their higher, quote unquote, education without understanding how to walk into a room, how to be received, how to greet someone, how to sit down with someone, how to share food with someone, how to feel confident and happy and comfortable in a social setting at a table? How do they do that if you have not taught them at home?
No, it's very true. And I was just actually thinking back to, like, I've over time learned French and German and lived in Vienna, Austria for a while. But like one of the main things you learn when learning a foreign language or about another culture is how to eat at the table, because different cultures have different, things. Like in Vienna, you don't switch hands. Like here we'll switch, hands that we cut with, and they don't do that. And they always keep their hands on the table, or they think you're doing something dirty, or, underneath.
That's fairly common in Europe. Yeah. And you're making a great point. It's such an education to go and eat with people who are different from you.
Yeah.
But still, you're going to find that in most places, except perhaps Bedouin Desert and some other places where you might be sitting on a carpet on the floor, in most places, you're going to be at a table and there will be implements. And it's your task to learn how to use those implements and share with those implements, because it's the most basic human exchange.
Yeah.
That's how can you be in government? And, I found myself joking about this with people, but how can you elect a representative who's never been up all night with a baby? Who's never changed a diaper, who's never had to make a meal out of Scotch tape and 3 carrots and whatever is in the fridge. If you don't have that cultural understanding, how can you pretend to lead a nation or a state or a county? And that's really the thing we're all trying to do. We're just trying to survive. We're trying to have our kids live, and we're trying to stay healthy. And so we have a responsibility too, to see that we are led by people who get it. If you've been waited on all your life, and some of my life I have been waited on, that's a different story for a different day. But and I love being waited on. But if you don't understand life at the table in its different kind of forms, what do you understand? It's a thing. And we're all, except me, driving through. Everybody's driving through, not just once, but several times a day, very often. Yes. I mean, the statistics, you've seen them. The statistics are horrifying. And another thing that people are not aware that they're doing, I think, is that you're carrying your frappuccino around all day, and you are putting sugar against your gums and your teeth all day. And your kids are sucking on these things all day. And the dentists are screaming. The hygienists are screaming. Affluent people who've always had good dental care are now rotting their teeth out with frappuccinos. And it's not just a few. It's epidemic. Yeah. And once your teeth are gone and you can kind of think, well, I can get, those implants or whatever. Is that what you want? Is that what you really want? I'm totally bionic, by the way, but I don't think that's the way we should approach our health. I mean, you want to keep as many of your teeth and as much of your hair and skin as you can.
So the last point, and we'll kind of wrap this up from here, but
Oh no,
I know a lot of the we could talk all day and I would totally
we
be fine
could.
with that. But a lot of the women who listen to the show, and myself included, we are busy. And so what drives the drive-through and all that is like no one has time to cook and just sit down at a table and all that. So I'm wondering what input you have for those of us listening, because I know it's possible and I do it.
It is possible. And first, I'm going back to, you have to make a decision, girl, about what's important. What is most important in your kids' lives, in your life? Is it more important for them to be studying Japanese and going to kickboxing and taking violin and playing baseball? Or is it more important? And you talk about high performance in women. And I like to say, I was high performing girl before women could even do that. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know. I know what it costs you emotionally. But in my case, because we didn't have quite as much choice in all this, I just said to each of my kids, you get two things, each of you can choose two things, a physical thing and an intellectual thing. Mm-hmm. And I will support you in those things, but that's it, two things. And the choice was theirs. And what my kids ended up doing, much to my surprise, my son kind of led the charge. He was the oldest. He said, I want to fence. I said, what? Excuse me? He said, I want to learn fencing. Okay. So he was entrusted with find out where you can do that and who, and so on. He came back. He found a studio in San Jose, which is where I was living at the time. Mm-hmm. It just happened to Connie Yu, if you're listening out there, the instructor remained a friend for life, fabulous woman. And I met these wonderful families. He loved it. His sisters dove in. They became fencers too. My youngest daughter ended up starting a fencing team at her college that she went to because they didn't have one. This is not going to work for everyone, but you have to put it back on your kids. Here's our life. Here's how you can help make our life better. Our life, not just your life. I am not your servant. I'm your teacher. And so when the kid cooks, the kid eats. When the kid chooses their activity, they participate in it. They put themselves in it. They value it. So if you're not thinking in those terms, I would ask you to think in those terms. My kids all played soccer at one point, 3 different kids, 3 different teams, because they said that's what they wanted to do. And at one point I said, how much do you love your soccer? Well, we don't love it. Okay, good. We're not doing it anymore because I didn't have time to do snack mom 3 different ways and uniform cleaning 3 different ways. And it was stuff that it wasn't age appropriate for them to be doing on their own. I would have had so many of these things were designed, by the way, by men for having the free labor of women. Mm-hmm. My son, we discussed him scouting at one point. And I called and found out, and they said, and so here's what you do as the mom, you sew on the uniform, the patches and so on, but he needs to have a man to come to the meeting with him. He needs to have a man. So it's like, thank you. Okay. I'm not gonna do that. But times have changed, and we women have great news. We have these amazing careers now. We have these amazing educations now, and there are more of us in med school and more of us in law school. But you can't, if you're going to have kids, are you saying that you are going to be less of a parent because you're a lawyer or a doctor? I hope not. I don't think so. I don't think that's what you want. But what goes out of the window, it's got to be something. Mm-hmm. And what I'm asking you is, don't make it the kids' health. Don't make it their nutrition emotionally or food-wise, because that's a way of sharing you too. And they need you. They need to share you. I had so much terrible childcare, when I was trying to deal with it. I've been there. It's hard. It's horrible. And then we very quickly go into political territory here where, okay, where do you get childcare? And why can't we get childcare? And why can't, my daughter is now trying to nurse her new baby, and she is in healthcare, and there is no accommodation made for nursing mothers in healthcare settings. Or I'm thinking, if you are an attorney, you're struggling too to pump your milk. It's a full-time job. Yeah. So we need to together strategize how. Let's do a seminar, Dr. Alex, because it's going to take all of us to re-gear. We're still doing it the old way. We're still doing it the guy way, which is you leave work in the morning at 7 or 6 with this expensive briefcase, and then you show up again at 7 or 8 at night, and then you start your family life. No, that's, and I don't care if you're online. I don't care if you're texting each other. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
So, and something very unpopular. What my kids have said, interesting, now that they're in their 40s, they're parents themselves, 2 of them. It's interesting to hear what your kids say worked as, you get your report card as a parent. What did we love about having you as our mom, and what did we hate? What really worked and what didn't. And I've been kind of surprised that what they say is our house was always orderly. We loved coming home to a house that was clean and that was peaceful, that had a sense of order. And I know what a struggle that is for so many. And that affects your food life too. And sitting down at the table, because I don't have time for that. I can't do that. It means it all has to be cleaned up and so on. So ladies, I hired help. I went without so much, but I hired the help that I needed in the house, not with the kids. I had help cleaning and cooking, but I did as much of the kids' stuff as I possibly could myself. I didn't want someone else raising my beloved little angels if I could possibly be there for a ball game or a ride somewhere or something. So that was where the trade-off came for me. I spent a lot of my money getting my floors clean. And that was for me, a lot of it. But you talk about self-care. You ever think about how much self-care is involved with having somebody else clean your floor and vacuum your house and wipe the baseboards? That is huge self-care, I think.
Oh, it is. I have that luxury. I will. And it's not really like, we all spend money on massage or on our nails or on stuff, but I think like on a deeper level, that kind of self-care of having someone else come in and clean for you. Like I have somebody, we have a 3-story house and I'm not cleaning that with 4 boys. Heck no.
Oh, so, 4 boys. Oh, 4 boys. I'm sorry. Oh.
And I've got wrist issues. I'm just like, screw that. So, every 2 weeks, like, and I'm there and I like read. And I, used to feel bad about that while she's cleaning, but I'm like, no, like this is helping her and it's helping me. And
there you go. And we all struggle with that guilt that is imbued in us culturally, that if you're not doing this all, well, just no. No, I used to walk with my kids after dinner. And I have happy memories of that. And what's wrong with that? So I did some cleaning too, and organizing and so on, but I always had good help, and we were a team. Whoever I hired, I respected and admired them. If someone ever came after me politically for, did that person pay the taxes? You know what? No, because that's another thing that is not built in our system. We don't have respect legally or culturally for the people who clean our bathrooms. And we need to do that. And here we are, we're talking about food, right? And health, but it's all part of the same thing. And we don't have respect for women who breastfeed. Still, what is that about?
I can go on a total soap tangent box about that, but
You
I was going
bet.
to share in that conversation for my listeners and anyone new. I interviewed a woman who's in corporate. She's a vice president and an attorney, and she told the story about she was actually pumping well in front of a room of 100 people,
Yeah.
giving a talk, and like she just created that culture inside of her workplace, and like I don't think anyone really knew that she had some quiet pump or something, but like that's the kind of stuff we have to just lead the charge with.
Yes.
I owned a business. I worked long hours. I had a nanny, and finally reached a point where I was like, I don't like other people raising my kid, but he breastfed till he was 2.5 because I just
You
closed
made it
down for
happen.
3 hours and like we napped and did feeding time and,
Right.
hung out.
You
And
made it
whatever.
happen, but we have not made it easy,
No.
or and so many women are still giving up on it, understandably,
Yeah.
because it's just too hard. And it's okay for you and me. I'm cheeky as all get out. I mean, I was always a brawler and would go to the mat, whenever I needed to, for a cause, for
Yeah.
my client or for a campaign or whatever. But for those who are less outspoken, we don't make allowances for the real stuff. Food, babies, families. That's the real stuff.
Yeah. And I think, just kind of bringing this full circle, I know for me, 2020 and even 2021, just with the crap we went through, lockdown, all of that, I think for a lot of people, it recentered some of our values and where maybe we haven't been putting enough effort, like in our relationships with our kids and in our eating and in our family time and our unit and how we address that. And so
Yeah, I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see
Yeah.
that. And the more affluent you are, the easier it is to not have relationships with your husband, your
Yeah.
partner, your kids, whatever. It's easier just to go your own way and text people when you need to communicate with them. Yeah. So if you're stuck in the same house, the rules change.
They do.
Yeah.
Big time.
But I don't want anyone to have to live in a cubicle. No.
Well, all right. And recapping and kind of bringing this full circle, for those listening, we talked about food. Don't eat crap, eat real food. Sugar, dairy, gluten, wheat are the big ones. Yeah. And, I think if we kind of couch the last bit of our conversation there, it's identifying the things that are really important.
Yes.
And making those pillars, and then the rest of your life falls into that. But, at some point we have to decide this is important and I'm going to make this happen. And then it all falls into place. So
just one more word comes to my mind, Dr. Alex, and my kids have said this, they thanked me for letting them be feral in many ways. And I think of myself as feral in many ways because I wasn't over-parented. And my kids had to be responsible for themselves.
Yeah.
In many ways, they could cook, they could clean. I didn't do homework for them. Never. Yeah. I did try and make one of those missions out of sugar cubes one time, and that went really badly. But there's nothing wrong with a little wildness in a childhood or in an adulthood either. Where women tend to be rule followers to the nth degree because we've struggled so hard to get to this high performance place where we are. But sometimes being feral is a superpower. It's okay.
Yeah.
And you can gift your kids that if you try. You can. Let them fail.
That's such a hard concept for us these days. But it's so important. There's so much to be learned there. Uh-huh. So, Lynn, thank you so much just for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. I've had some other kind of women more in their later years in life, but I just love, and this is such a great platform to just have people come on and really share what you've learned.
So fun to go across the generations whenever we can, and our lives don't allow that enough. I love it.
I agree. So real quick, how can people connect with you? I'll put the link for your book in.
Yeah, the easy way is lynnbowman.com, LYNNEBOWMAN.com, and connections are on there. Should be for everything because I'm on Instagram and I'm being told I should be on TikTok, and I'm going, no, I can't.
I say you don't need another platform. Pick whatever one works for you.
Oh God, I love podcasting. This is so much fun being here with you in our virtual room. So, but if you go on lynnbowman.com, everything is there. The book Brownies for Breakfast is on Amazon, and you can get it in paperback, or you can download it. You can get it hardback, or you can go to your bookseller and say, I want that fabulous new book, Brownies for Breakfast. And when they say, oh, I don't think we have it, you go, oh my God, no, it's blowing up. It's huge. You need to get some. So it helps me, it helps get the book out there if you go to your independent bookseller and they will order it for you. They can get it from their wholesaler. And I hope they'll order more than that. But by all means, go on my website, sign up on Lynn's list, and then I'll send you recipes too. Because I'm always developing new stuff or redoing old stuff in interesting ways. So I love having you on my mail list. If you're willing to do that, I don't, maybe once a week, and that's it. And I'm not selling anything, I promise you. I'm giving recipes away. So I'm selling books, but the way I put it is it's like 30 or 40 bucks, and you'll save yourself $400,000 in health expenses if you just read the book. So I think it's a bargain.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And if our conversation's any indication, I'm guessing the book's pretty awesome. So I'm going to definitely check it out after that.
Thank you.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much.